evil within too. Just trying to pose like how Sebastian does in the cover art. Game is pretty cool. Actually, it's really good. I love Sebastian Castellanos. He's got a cool name. I just love the evil within. It really defines evil. Or it is a good way to depict it. I mean, evil takes all sorts of forms, I think, but you know, it could be just a bad guy. It could be these literal monsters, your inner demons, yourself. It could be regret, deceit. It takes all shapes and forms, and this game's really good at really putting that across. It's not even just, you know, hey, zombies, hey, monsters, demons, ghosts. It's so much deeper than that. It's like the epitome of the fact that it's all around you, everywhere you go, everyone you meet. Well, that's not totally fair to say, but it's there, like lurking in the shadows, in your subconscious, in the pits of your mind, and it's just in the air all around you. And what I like about this is that it's like a redemption story, I guess, here, but like these things have to be explained in a certain way. But I just love this game because it really stood out to me at first. It goes so beyond what other things try to do, and what I think they ultimately fall short on, because they cover things that scary movies, scary games, they cover such a small sliver of what it all really is in a grand scale. And this game is perfect for those who kind of think of these things in a much bigger, larger picture, where you know, for those who even do that at all, it's easy to think of, you know, very select things, to interpret them, to learn from them, to absorb the information when you're younger, older. And I think it's important to know these things, because, and especially in a game format, because you watch a movie and you're like, you know, maybe you get a message out of it, whatever, but I think when you really play a game, it can really help you kind of put the pieces together. And instead of just ignoring the fact that these things are a thing, you tackle them head on, you face your fears, you fight the evil, I don't know, this game is just so good for as far as stuff like that goes. That's why I'm drawn to it the way that I am. It's not just the fact that it's a Bethesda game. It's not just the fact that like a lot of Japanese people have worked on it. It's not just the AAA quality and graphics. It's the design, how they've designed their characters and the story in a way that way it can be interpreted. The enemies, the bosses, It's just so good, and it doesn't even have to be the fact that like, because this kind of story, it's pretty typical, you know, cop, regrets, decisions, choices, has to live with them, really. I mean, that may not even mean that he's like a bad guy or a corrupt cop, or it's just a whole authority thing, I think. You know, no matter who you are, you're a regular person, but this is your job. You're trying to do good, be good. And especially as a player, it's up to you to fight this battle, to win this war. And evil itself has been around for so long, and will be around for so long, and is a thing. And as untangible as it is, it's so very real. And it's up to you, the player, the person, to decide how you want to... what actions to take. You know, are you as evil as things are depicted in this game? It's not just some criminal mastermind. We're not talking some mad scientist. This is like... this is it. This is as deep as it can go. And, I think exploring that firsthand in this simulated world is a really nice way to... because this game will make you think of, like... and maybe it's all just a passive thing, I don't know, but it'll make you think of, like... you know, who you are. The things that you've done, the things that you're willing to do, what you're doing now. Are those good things? Like, I think a lot of people... unfortunately have to watch movies and play these games, and they may see things about themselves or hear some kind of a quote that reminds me of them, or maybe even someone around them for that matter, that, you know, like, oh shit, is that who I am? Like, it's a really nice reality check. And I'm not saying that's what this game's all about, but it's definitely a part of it. It's a part of the system, and it's very hard to ignore here, because it's not even just the simple fact that, like, you know, is this something that's going to be able to bring you some knowledge and some wisdom? Because I look at every game and every movie, everything, media, people, I'm just constantly learning, you know, observing. That's all I've ever really been able to do for so long. Family, friends, girlfriends. And you really have to put yourself in this position that you can, just being righteous and peace, and I don't know, like, this game has a lot of that in there. It's very psychological, it's very mind-bending, it's very trippy, it's very you know, none of it really makes sense, and it's not supposed to, because, like, not a lot of things make sense in the first place. It's, you know, yes, on the surface, it's an action horror, survival horror, and yeah, or it could just be a game for fans of horror, you know, and that's really cool, because I think it's the people that embrace horror the most, who are like some of the nicest people, you know, because they've learned these things, they've tackled it head on. I think there's a lot of people that avoid, you know, ooh, demons and the devil and Satan and blood and gore, and, you know, or they dabble in it, but they don't really take it in. They don't really, like, process it. You know, I realize most of the world is revolved around just pure entertainment, and You know, there's a time for that, there's a time for learning, there is a time for feelings and... But I think horror and stuff like this really kind of go full circle, and it goes hand in hand with, you know, where is your life at right now? Like, you know, are there people like this that's around you that, you know, you wish you can help them, and like, I don't know, like, not a lot of games I feel like are brave enough or have the courage to kind of really go into this kind of depth, because they're too scared. They're like, you know what, this is too real, this is too, like, it makes people think too much, it makes them, like, you know, it's all about the world keeping everyone in line and in order, and... but I think this is really one of those games that can kind of, like, break that chain. And they're not afraid to go there. You know, it really goes in depth with the whole, like, this is your own personal hell, and maybe the world is hell to you, maybe... You know, my issue with psychological stuff like this is that it's really hard to follow, it's confusing, it's a lot for a person to process. I think a lot of that does depend on who you are, sure, but like... You know, like, when you play this game, you... Not only are you appreciating the horror aspect of it, but it really... I think it's one of those games you can play, and I think you come out better as a person because of it. And I know that sounds kind of like over the top, but... Because, all in all, like... Everything that you see and do in this game, and... That... All of that is kind of the bottom line here, and... I think that's a really important thing to kind of grasp. It's not just about... I mean, the story here is about family. It's about... doing the right thing and making up for your mistakes, like all these things, right? That people do on a daily basis, but this is, And these Bethesda games... They all send such a good message, you know? They all kind of, like, go there. Really violent, really gory, really rough, really real, all these, you know, typical things. But they stick to such a good formula. Everything's really grounded. And, they kind of make you go out of your comfort zone and but at the same time, like, kind of find your cozy space too, like... You know, the game's done so well that... Aside from the messages and stuff that you'd be able to get from it, it's just really enjoyable. Like, all that kind of deep stuff aside, like, it's a really good game. The cutscenes are really nice to watch.
Kidman?
Hello, Sebastian. It's been a long time.
3 years. I've been trying to track you down for 3 years.
It's very enjoyable, very cinematic, very story-driven, very... very thematic, very eventful. You never know what kind of mechanic you're gonna run into. You never know what kind of person you're gonna run into, what kind of room you're gonna see, what kind of enemy you're gonna encounter, what kind of friendly person you're gonna encounter. It's just a surprise. Like, each section of this game is such a, like, nice little pick-me-up. You know, it'll definitely keep your attention the entire time. And as I've heard someone say before, and I agree with it, I didn't exactly sit down and like think about it that way, or you know, because but this game does provide a lot of Sebastian's backstory, a lot of, you know, this time around it is really about him. It's about his mind, his own journey, his own thoughts, beliefs, opinions, the way he sees the world. I think the closest thing you're gonna come to something like this, surprisingly, aside from all the hellish imagery and yes, it's like a simulation in a simulation. It's it's a lot. But the only movie I can kind of like think of when I think of this game is like something like Jacob's Ladder, where, you know, it really is about this guy who maybe have PTSD, or like nothing's really just explainable. Nothing really just makes sense. And this guy kind of battles that mentally each and every day. And I think you can really get lost in your own head, in your own world, in your own, the environment around you, and this is really a game to kind of cope with that, maybe even, or it can do so many things for you as a person, I think, because I think a lot of games can do that, sure, like, oh, this is inspiring, this is happy, this is sad, this is like, this maybe makes me angry, like, even just playing a game, you're going through so many emotional roller coasters. But this is such a great game to like turn off all the lights, you know, really get into it. It's very immersive, it's very groundbreaking. I have too many good things to say about it. You know, I love the collectibles, I love the different guns you get, the different, like, everything about this game really just stands out to me, because I've always had to kind of project this whole, like, you know, peace, love, and happiness, and that's all there, it really is, but, you know, there's also a lot of things, like, a person might have to ignore, or push aside, or forget, or, you know, and this is a great game to kind of remind you that, you know, like, things aren't always pretty, and it's a really dark kind of train of thought. But the point is, like, and you know, all in all, at the end of the day, it's a fucking video game, you know, like, all these messages and deep things, like, really, I mean, it's just kind of like, it's just how life is, and I think that kind of thing gets accepted by people. Well, it can be, right? You never really know. You can't really get into people's heads. You can't really figure other people out. You don't know what's going on in their mind, and even if they tell you, you don't really know. You don't see and feel and hear and what other people, and it could just be your neighbor, it could be anyone, it could be, you know, and maybe you don't want to know these things, right? But I think here is like, you know, you're taking this dude and you're really getting into his head, and like, it's just weird to kind of see this, like, be presented to you in this way, because it's not a very typical mindless, you know, oh, I'm shooting some zombies and some demons, cool, you know, great. And even stuff like that, there is kind of, like, every game you play, every movie you watch, it's story, it's writing, it's production, it's a lot of people just like you and I that put these things together, you know, so a lot of themselves, as well as just the knowledge of the world, went into all of this stuff. It's not just the entertainment value was always there, and And there's nothing that'll change that. But I don't think you're gonna like go into this game and really come out of it the way that you may or may not think you will. It's just interesting to me that a game like this can have that effect. That's kind of the whole thing here, is that, you know, there's a lot of games I play where, oh, that was cool, you know, time to move on, back to reality. It really is for me, like, it's not just a game that takes me to another place, a better place, another world. It really, I don't know. Like, for me, it's like, I almost, you know, do I feel more comfortable when I'm, like, not playing this game, or in the world that I see around me, or do I feel more comfortable kind of trying to help this guy out and through his problems and the way he sees and does things? Like, it just feels good to, like, to really be the good guy here, and you're not just a hero, you're not just just a good person necessarily. You're trying so hard to do the right thing, and that's a very hard thing to do because it's so easy to do the wrong thing. And it really does become about a person's nature, sure, but like, yeah, it's just cool. Like, I love it when games can do this, because I think that's the true art of games and media. It's not just, you know, hey, an art style, a brand, a franchise. It goes so much more beyond that. Because there's just layers to everything. Ogres have layers. In this game, it's like the middle of a jawbreaker, you know? The closer you get to that core, the more it's like, this is gonna run out. This was so good. The darker the colors get. It was tasty at first. You know, maybe the end of it is the sweetest part. Maybe it's like this building block of like this important thing in life that can be very overlooked, and it's just cool that a game like this exists, and I really respect it. I really take it into consideration. It's one of the, it really is one of my favorite games, and you know, and it's the only thing like it out there that I'm aware of, and it meets such a high standard of, because there's not a lot of horror games to begin with, and not a lot of good ones. And this really is one of those big ones, man. Like, if you're a horror fan at all, there's no way you haven't come across this. Like, even if you don't play a lot of games, but you're like a horror fanatic, and I know where stuff like that goes. Like, they go to all the conventions, they've watched all the movies, they're like historians, they have all the figures, the merchandise. Like, people really, this is like stuff they live for, man. And it's all here in this game. Like, everything you could ever want from a horror game is in here. It's not just serial killers, it's not just supernatural, it's not just... They tackle everything, and I don't know how they do it. It's honestly amazing. How they were able to, like... And considering the studios, considering the people that's worked on it, is definitely a reason why it came out the way it did and how great it is, and it's a fucking masterpiece. Okay, like, seriously, I don't know, it's just really good. I don't regret playing it at all. I don't regret getting involved. I don't regret, there's just no regrets. I think these big horror franchises, game IPs, you know, they really do hold their own. They do well on their own. They don't need my help. They don't, you know, like, they're so good, and they're so, you know, we're gonna naturally be drawn to stuff like this anyway, because it is a part of our nature, and I think that's really cool to, because here's the thing, with a lot of games similar to this, and granted, there's still, this game is like a little goofy. It's a little cartoony. It can't. It's not all like, you know, if there was like, if all they would have had to do is put in a little bit more like of whatever that is, and make it into this really like raw, visceral, kind of just disturbing. Like, to me, it's whatever, right? But like, because granted, it would be cool to have things like this and go to that extent of like, you know, this is the most fucked up game I've ever played. This is the scariest game I've ever played. The goriest, the freakiest, the strangest. It's definitely up there. And I don't think they tackle it quite the same way here as like, because granted, marketing, all these things that go into the release of these games, it's not all gonna be like some fan-made horror game where they might be able to get away with that stuff, almost to the point where your game is banned, you know, or banned in certain countries because it's just so bad, and a collective number of people can see that. Like here, they kind of did whatever they had to do to kind of get by all that stuff, but just barely. Which is really cool, man, because it's not easy to distribute stuff like that, because, you know, this is something, all in all, it's still a business, right? You cannot sell stuff to people that is going to really, I wouldn't say fuck the world up, because like, Jesus Christ, it does that itself. It doesn't need a game to do that for it, but kind of like make people go insane, make people go mad. It's, you know, there's a lot of games rated M, bad influences. People take these games to heart and they might act on it, right? Like, you're not supposed to do that, but some idiots do. And yeah, like this goes into all that very ritualistic stuff. I mean, it's pretty gnarly. Like, I've seen a fair amount of horror stuff in my day, and I will say that some of the more indie stuff can go that far, so it's not like I can put this game really there, but it's so... Well, they were smart because they used the psychological stuff as the cover-up. Instead of like, you know, this game is just straight up like gnarly. But I can't express how close it is to that it's pretty mind-blowing. But yeah, on top of just kind of all that, gameplay is pretty good. It's fun to find the next best weapon. As I mentioned earlier, it's nice to upgrade, it's nice to loot. There's a lot of loot to get. There's a lot of, yeah, it's just the fact that they were able to they put so much into this game. I don't know how they squeezed it all in there. Granted, once again, this is a Bethesda game, so that's just kind of what they do. They are like the masters of just this super high tier quality, expensive, really great game formula, and I don't think gaming would be the same without what the things that they do, the studios that they have, they've done such a great job at so many things. Some of my favorite games are Bethesda games. Or maybe not my favorite. This is definitely my favorite one of kind of the bunch of this style. Like, sure, they do other stuff as well, right? But like, just kind of within this realm of this kind of game thing that they're doing. but I've played some, you know, a good number of a lot of them, and it wasn't even like, oh, you know, I know that they're all made by the studio. I never was biased towards the studio itself, but like, I just kind of naturally got drawn to each game. It's always nice when you can really like get involved in stuff like this, but it wasn't like forced or intentional exactly. It was just like, hey, this looks really good. This is up my alley. You know, this is my break from like anime games and just everything else that I play. And I have honestly some of the best times playing stuff just like this because of, you know, it really feeds kind of who I am and what I've become, the things that I've been through, the things that I've done, what lies ahead of me, past, present, future. You know, horror is, as much as I don't glorify it necessarily, it's also one of the closest things to kind of reality, if you want to call it that, or real life, or whatever this is. And you know, this is the best at what it does. And I hope we get more of it. I hope I get to enjoy more of it myself somehow, even with what we have now. Or, I mean, dude, honestly, like a live action movie or an anime or I wish this game feels really underrated to me. Like, it's not really out there, which kind of bugs me, because like it is so damn good. Give us more. Give us a fucking TV show, a movie, and something, you know what I mean? Give us more games, please. Jesus, man. This shit is so good. I could just like, some spin-offs, some, you know, like I feel like this really is the most unknown game of this quality that does what it does. And you know what? I think there's reasons for it too, because like I said earlier, it can be too much for certain people to handle. And unfortunately, this is why Resident Evil is kind of the king here versus this, because mindless zombies, it's just I guess it, you know, it's what works. But this is definitely something to hold in high regards, and for those who have played it and experienced it, I think you're very fortunate and very lucky, because there may be a lot of people out there that don't know what this game is, or hasn't played it, and I don't know, I can't really, I know it's kind of dramatic, but I can't really picture my life being the same without have played this game, or without it being in my life. I don't know, it's weird. Like, I think it was a very important part in my development, and you know, this may not be stuff I'm always thinking about, or always outside of this game or whatever, but you know, whether I'm playing it, whether I'm talking about it, whether I'm watching it, whatever it may be, that is what automatically pops into my head. It's just all those things, like, and that's kind of cool. I don't know, like, it's the one moment where you kind of have to pause for a second and think a little bit, and like, you know, whether it's yourself. And that's not really fair to say. This is definitely more of like, when I say stuff like that, I mean like Sebastian, you know, like the player. But if anything, this is really good to just kind of like, it's more so like everything outside of yourself, I think, because there's a good chance that if you play this, you're probably a pretty cool person. You're probably very balanced. You're probably very chill. All these things, peaceful, whatever. People make mistakes. No one's perfect. Yada yada. But I think this is a great way to understand and realize, you know, if there's like bad people around you, do something about it. As in, like, not do something about it, but just like solve that problem, you know, help yourself and get out of whatever situation that you may or may not be in, or because evil is real. It is out there, and it will try to eat up and consume whatever good is out there. The battle between good and evil has been around, I'm just assuming, forever. A never ending waging war, and yeah, it's not good. I don't know, this game really puts me in a very different headspace, like, obviously not in a bad way, but just a very cautious and alerted and self-aware kind of state of mind. So just some things to think about. Some, you know, all I'm really doing is literally like I'm not even expressing what this game is to me in my own way at all. Like this is it. Like, there's really not much else to it. I mean, I think everyone's gonna interpret it in their own way and in a different way, but ultimately it is just, you know, that's what the game's called, the evil within yourself, within other people, within the world, within the universe, within one's own mind and heart, body, soul. You know, it's not called the evil outside or the evil over there, you know. It's the evil within. And that can be said in so many different ways. It could just be the fact that, like, hey, you know that there's something kind of bad going on. It's almost evil. You could be the nicest, coolest person, but it's almost evil of yourself to kind of accept the way that things are that they are and not do anything about it. And it's a very hard emotion because, like, there's a lot of good people in the world and a lot of good things, but it's really tough, man. Evil is so powerful and it's so strong. You know, they have a lot backing them up. Every bad guy, every movie you've ever played, every movie you've ever seen, every game you've ever played, bad guys, they're so, you know, the things that they'll do to take over and to be better and to gain power, tyrants, corruptness, the sins, being selfish, greedy, politics, yeah, this game is a really nice way to kind of say fuck you to all that, you know? Like, fuck all that. So yeah, that's my opinion, that's my belief, that's my thought, that's yeah, it's interesting. This game is definitely not a typical simple kind of thing to me at all. And I really appreciate that. Yeah. The Evil Within too.